just now, and Emily's going to be talking all about embracing neurodiversity, understanding and recognising, and how we actually support as well. So, Emma, if I can ask you to come down onto the stage and join us, and we will start to hear from yourself and find out more about neurodiversity and really about embracing it as well. So welcome, Emma. So Emma is representing the Better Health Generation organisation. Emma, I understand you're very passionate about health, well-being, early years, and sort of working for a long period of time in that training sector. I know from our conversations as well, being very heavily involved within first aid training as well. But without me sort of rabbiting on too much, over to yourself to talk to us about that empowerment through neurodiversity and awareness, really. Thank you.
Hi, and thanks, Martin, for introducing me and having me here today. I'm Emma Davis. I'm from the Better Health Generation, and we support with all things health and well-being. I'm not going to go into huge details of what we cover, but we have a team of mental health nurses, general health nurses, occupational therapists, counsellors, psychotherapists, lifestyle coaches, and specialists in neurodiversity. It's one of the specialisms we focus on as well. We work quite heavily in the training sector, employability, education, corporate, to support with webinars, CPD, and various other aspects that companies might need in order to support their team. We work quite heavily, like I say, in the youth, with youth, sports, justice. So that's why we've been invited here today to talk to you about neurodiversity. So neurodiversity is a term used quite widely at the minute. It's actually derived from the difference in the way that people's brains work. So people who are classed as neurodiverse, they work differently to the average neurotypical person. So I've put on the screen here a little bit more information than I would do normally, purely because I think these slides are going to be shared with everybody. So I wouldn't normally go in so heavy, but I just wanted to for you guys to have something to take away, really. During this me talking, I'd really love you to engage with me. I'm going to ask you a few questions. I think it's really important for self-reflective practice. So please do ask any questions, and if I don't know the answers, I will get back to you. But if I do, then obviously I'll answer them in a timely way. So I'm going to move on to asking you guys a question. So hold on, I'm going to stay there for a second. So can anybody tell me any common neurodivergent conditions? Does anybody know any? Is anybody up to chatting with me in the chat box? I see it. Let me have a look. Anybody know any common neurotypical conditions? Anybody feeling brave enough to write in the chat box? Yeah. Fab. I think, yeah, these are great. These are the most common conditions that we come across day to day. Autism, ADHD, real Asperger's. Yeah, I've worked, my background is actually as a nanny. I've worked with a child who's had Asperger's before. I think the interesting point to remember about people who suffer with neurodiverse conditions is that they all present in different ways. So people can have it more severely, or they can just have slight traits. It completely depends. None of it actually presents in a typical way, so to speak. Everybody is different. And I actually really love that. And we're going to come on to, strengths of people who suffer with neurodiverse conditions in a minute. So I really love this table because it really gives you a clear idea of some of the common neurodivergent conditions out there. So Tourette's you've mentioned, autism, dyslexia's on there, dyspraxia. There's lots of different conditions on there. Anxiety, sensory processing is huge. And I'll come on to it in a sec on ways we can manage that in the workplace and for, yes, I do consider it. What I personally would say is a neurodiverse condition, but obviously it's not on the chart. But I think People are asking lots of questions. That's great. I'm really great. It's so great to have this interaction. Yes, absolutely, because I think it presents itself in so many different ways, and it is just a different way of the brain working. So absolutely. So let's move on to this next bit. So we're going to list some strengths and challenges. So signs of neurodiversity can be issues with focus and concentration. So intense interest in particular things. So I've got a friend who is absolutely obsessed with computers. He can pull them apart and has been doing it since such a young age. So it's really interesting that they get quite fixated on a particular subject sometimes. They can have repetitive behavior, routines. Some call it OCD. Anybody, I mean, I'd probably slightly consider myself as having a bit of OCD. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who can relate to that. Difficulty following instructions, difficulty organizing themselves, processing sensory information, filtering out external stimulations. And obviously in the workplace and when training or when learning, these can be issues. And I think having the same foods, having the same foods over and over, absolutely. I think I am absolutely 100% guilty of that. I find something that I really like and I really enjoy, and then I kind of go back to it until I bore myself it, and then I move on to the next thing. So these are the challenges that I've just listed out. Can anybody out there relate to any of the challenges that I've just listed to? I've obviously got somebody here. I can't see your name. There's no name on there. There's just a user ID. But anybody else suffer with any of these difficulties? And phobias, absolutely. Finding it hard to say how you feel. That's great. Keep them coming, guys. It's really important that you guys use this as a reflective session as well. So how can we support these challenges? So I'll go through a couple of them and give you a couple of ideas. So issues with focusing and concentration, get into a routine. So I know for myself that listening to certain types of music helps me. I play cricket, and I lose my focus sometimes when I'm out batting. So what I will do for any cricketers out there is I'll walk between each ball, I'll walk out of the crease, and then I'll walk back in again to reset myself. For people who struggle with neurodiversity, this is a method that works quite well. So testing the waters, find something that works for you. Repetitive behavior and routines, that's absolutely fine as long as you know how to get yourself out of that. So for example, if you're working on something and it's a barrier, causing a barrier, coming up with strategies to move you forward. And often people think about lots of things they can do, but try and find one thing. Don't make it complex, don't overcomplicate it. Difficulty, if you've got a colleague or a student who's struggling to follow instructions, maybe they're struggling because it's being said to them verbally. Maybe they'd be better following a PowerPoint list, or maybe they're better if you send it to them in an email, or if you write it, or if you if you have a conversation with them face to face. Overstimulating, a huge one. If you're working in an office and there's telephones going off left, right, and centre, there's lots of different conversations in a large room. Have a chat. If you're studying, if it's your workplace, have a chat with somebody superior and say to them, like, I need a quiet space. Maybe consider asking and approaching that. Can I work from home? Is there a room I can work in? Find the best working environment for yourself, and don't be afraid to ask. Talking about neurodiversity is so important, and as we move forward, it's becoming a less taboo subject. And actually, in order to get the best out of yourself or your colleague who potentially is neurodiverse, you need to put these methods and strategies in place. Difficulty following instructions and organising, we've talked about. So let's have a look at some of these comments. Finding it hard to say you feel negative about yourself. How do you think you could get through the negativity talking about yourself? Do you know what I do? It sounds really silly. I do it with my children. Each morning, I'll talk to them about 3 positive things they're going to achieve today, 3 positive thoughts. And it really does help. Kind of, it sounds really corny. Like, look in the mirror, say to yourself, I can do this. I've got this today, and I want to achieve this today. And make sure out of everything you achieve that one thing. And at the end of the day, you can be proud of yourself. Setting yourself goals that are unachievable won't help you. It will make you stressed. It will make you anxious. Just make sure that your colleague or yourself or whoever it is that is struggling with their condition, they have those methods and strategies in place. Okay, so let's have a look. Voluntary work. Doing voluntary work, what do you mean? As like a distraction? Tell me more about what your thoughts are around the voluntary work. Let's move on to the next slide. So, oh, I've moved on too quickly. I'm getting a bit click happy. So, often people who struggle with neurodiversity, they actually have quite unique skills and talents. Does anybody have any idea what these unique talents may be? I'm going to start you off whilst I'm waiting for the chat box. That's what I was just going to talk about, actually. Super focused on task. Whilst you can struggle with following instructions, often people who are neurodiverse really are able to focus on a particular task. They're often very good at working through numbers. They're very creative. They're often very good at problem solving. If anybody's out there who is one of those people, it's quite incredible to watch somebody who is hyper focused and able to problem solve quite effectively. Creativity is a huge thing as well. But I think when you're looking at these signs and conditions and symptoms that I'm talking about today, I think they're really reflective of anybody, not just people who are potentially going through a diagnosis for a neurodiverse condition. Everybody has, different unique skills, talents, and things like that. But actually, it's just remembering that some people get to these in a different way. Health and safety, quite particular about health and safety. My eldest son, we used to call him Mr. Health and Safety because he used to be obsessed with it. So, and although he's not being diagnosed as neurodiverse in any aspect, it is, it could have been back then. It's kind of eased now, but it could have definitely been thought as a trait. Troubleshooting, absolutely, yeah. But don't you think, though, guys, that if we harness these skills and talents in the right way, they are just so they can be productive and innovative and just bring so much to the team. Everybody can bring something to the team. It's about finding out about each of your employees, your co-workers, your students, and finding out what you can, what makes them tick, what's going to get the best out of them. Because if you can get the best out of them, then they're going to offer the team the best, the best effort, and then you're going to move forward effectively. They're going to hit goals, you're going to hit targets, and they're going to feel valued. And I think that's really, really important. Consider panic attacks as neurodiversity. Panic attacks wouldn't be classed as neurodiversity. But I guess they could be it could be, if you're struggling with neurodiversity, it could be something that, because you're struggling with anxiety, then you could suffer from panic attacks. Okay, so panic attacks they can, so from a health and well-being perspective, panic attacks can be due to stress or trauma. They can be due to, it's a really big topic, that talking about panic attacks and what they're due to. They could literally be caused by numerous things. So I'm going to move on from that. If you want to talk to me about panic attacks, I'll pop my email in the chat box, and we can talk to. We've got specialist counsellors, etc., that can talk to you about those kind of things. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Conscious of time. So, opening up the conversation. Hold on, somebody's asked, what is neurodiversity? Neurodiversity is a term used to describe the different ways in which people's brains work. I hope that helps. That's kind of a simplified version of the dictionary version. So, opening up the conversation. If you know somebody who you think may or may not have neurodiversity, it's really important to listen. Don't make assumptions. Ask positive questions, and based on the strengths associated with neurodivergence. Be patient, speak clearly and openly, and don't be afraid of talking about neurodiversity. Please click on the button, poll button. Okay. Yeah, so I've only got one vote at the minute about, do you have any neurodivergent colleagues or students in your organisation? There's lots of polls going on there, guys. I'd really love you to get involved in those. It really helps us. We're currently doing a deep dive into neurodiversity in the workplace and leadership and management at the minute at the Better Health Generation. So we're really excited about that. Anyway, so opening up the conversation. Do you guys find it easy to talk about neurodiversity? Are you finding that in your workplace or in your learning environment, it is tricky to navigate and talk about, or do you feel that you feel accepted? Do you feel that your superiors support you in the right ways? What would you like from, what would you like more of? Do you feel comfortable talking to people? Especially when you're out from work, I get stressed out. What do you mean you get stressed out by being in work and managing the neurodiverse symptoms or signs and difficulties that you have? If you could expand, that would be great. It's really great that you guys are interacting with me today. It's really important for self-reflection. Right. So, accommodations and support. What can you do to support yourself, your colleagues, or people that you're working alongside? Short breaks. Focus on one job at a time. I've talked about this a few minutes ago. Give yourself achievable targets. Give your colleagues achievable targets. If you're a manager or you're in a leadership role and you know that somebody's struggling, you might know that they are neurodivergent. You might not know but suspect they are. Focus on giving them one task at a time. Make it achievable for them. Because the worst thing you can do, whether they're neurodivergent or not, is to overwhelm somebody and make them feel like they're not going to be able to get through the amount of work set. And also, you're just going to get more out of them. You'll get a better quality because they feel respected and valued. So you're much more likely to get more out of them. Set timers. I do this. I set out in my diary. I have literally I set timers for each project I'm working on, so that I don't get distracted. I get very easily distracted. So for me, those timers really help bring me back on track. If you're in an office environment, use do not disturb signs when you're working on a project. Let the team know you need some quiet time, need some space. Understanding those sensory issues, plan accordingly. If telephones are a distraction, if people talking are a distraction, put your phones on silent. Great to have mobile phones, so accessible. However, it is a huge distraction. So your working environment is something you really need to take into consideration. Relaxation, yoga, it can be relaxation like yoga. You can listen to music, read a book, whatever you need. Find out what makes you or your colleague tick and helps them refocus and regain some control of what they're meant to be working on. A job which I enjoyed but was low spectrum. Okay, yeah, it was back in April, I believe it's okay. So if you want to go back into that job, how can somebody support you into that job? Would you feel comfortable being open and talking to the HR team who are interviewing you, potentially going into an interview? Some people don't like online interviews. Don't be afraid to ask for a face-to-face. It's really important that we, I know it's easier said than done, but please, don't be afraid to ask for what's going to help you. If you don't understand any of the language, ask questions. It shows that you're willing to learn, and you know that you really want the job, and that should be taken into consideration. Let's move on. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. It's not moving me on. So, any questions from anybody? That was a really brief overview, yeah, please feel free to ask any questions. Let's have a look what's going on the polls over here.
If we have a look over the polls, that may give us some areas to
do you have any neurodivergent colleagues or students in your organisation? So we've got 11 votes and we've got 35 people online, 36 people online. Does anybody want to add to that before I have a little chat about it? Because I suspect it's actually quite a bit higher than that. I'll come back to it. If everybody could just look at the polls now and fill them in, that would be great. Do you feel neurodiverse while studying work? You consider disability. Okay. Right, I'm going to go through them. Oh, we're still popping. Everybody's voting. Give you a couple of minutes just to quickly fill those in. I'm going to start talking about do you feel neurodiversity has caused problems while studying, at work, or with recruitment? Okay, so we've got 9 votes that say yes. Is that because you didn't feel comfortable asking for support? Is that because it's a taboo subject and we don't talk about it enough? Would you be open to talking about it more? Because I work with a lot of corporate companies, and at the minute I'm working with these companies with HR teams on how to recruit neurodiverse people who and how to make sure that they are interviewing them in the right way and offering varying ways of interviews. Like I say, face-to-face, online. Do they need voice recordings of the questions that are going to be asked? We talk to the HR leadership and management team about how to put strategies in place, processes in place. We work quite closely with the NHS on this as well at the minute, which is amazing because it really means that we're talking about it. It really means that if you are neurodiverse, you can go in to your studying environment, your work environment, or even into your interview and say, look, I am either diagnosed as neurodiverse. These are what my needs are. These are what my strengths are. Be confident, because it makes you no less able. In fact, it offers talents, and for certain lines of work, you're going to be the innovative flair that business needs to drive them. So it's easier said than done, but I'd say hold your head high, own it, and learn what your strengths are. Learn where you can really fly, because it's really important. This is turning into like some kind of TEDx talk. I'm sorry. Motivational speech. Do you feel having neurodiversity benefits your role? This is interesting. Honestly, this makes me so happy that we've got a higher percentage that have said yes. Can you pop in the chat box and tell me, these 9 people, why you think it has benefited your role, in the hope that the 30% of people that have voted no can get a little bit of inspiration and feel a little bit more positive. Let's have a look in the chat box quickly.
Lots of activity in the chat box. Hopefully you've got enough time to sort of cover it anyway.
Enjoyed it. Let's go. I agree. It is massively understood. It's, yeah, I mean, yeah, Is it a disability? I suppose it depends on who you speak to. For me, people that I've spoken to are neurodiverse that don't have strategies in place, don't feel supported. Yes, they feel it is a disability because they are really struggling to be understood, and their leaders and managers potentially are not getting the best out of them. And the more we talk about it, the more we're going to be able to do that. Fear of judgment. Yeah, I mean, yeah, fear of judgment. Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand that. Do you feel comfortable speaking to your line managers, your tutors? Do you feel comfortable talking to them about it? Open the conversation. Be that person. I agree. A lot of companies don't have the resources, and I'm working with companies at the minute who don't have the resources, but excitingly are starting to join us for CPD webinars and workshops in order to make sure they are supporting people who are neurodiverse, and because they have admitted that they have struggled to recruit into certain areas because they don't know how to manage people who struggle with neurodiversity. It shouldn't be a struggle. It should be a case of they're neurodiverse, this is what their needs are, let's implement this to make sure we get the best out of them. But it is slow. I 100% agree, it is slow, but the more we talk about it and the more webinars that are put on like this, the more people are going to understand it, and the more people are going to naturally put in strategies and pathways for people who, whose brains do operate in a different way. My last employer were very discriminatory to disabilities, but it did it in a way that you couldn't take them to ACAS. I'm really sorry to hear that. I mean, it shouldn't be the way. And the more we talk about it, the more people like that hopefully will get on board. Makes clear communicator. Makes me a clear. You're a clear communicator, which is great, which benefits team productivity. That's a real positive. Thank you so much for putting that in there. My condition of disability, our disability come under neurodiversity, and have to explain. Did a one-to-one session with them about my condition. If you're happy to talk about it, that's great. Yet they're still discriminated. Do you think it's a lack of understanding? I personally feel that when I go into companies and talk about neurodiversity, often it is a lack of understanding and ignorance more than anything else. And it is all about education. Neurodiverse is, it's a term that we've adapted and used towards these conditions to kind of put them in like one area and kind of bulk them together, but they are all so different. I mean, you've seen the list on the, I think it was slide number 4, 3 or 4, but you've seen all the different conditions there. I mean, they're so varied and offer different positives, and potentially, some of them are more difficult to navigate. But I do feel it's a lack of understanding, to be honest. Neurodiversity is such a huge term and covers such a huge area. I changed careers after 20 years as my employer was not supportive. I ended up having a breakdown. I have a great job and wish I'd left sooner. That's great. That's really positive. Thank you for putting that. So if everybody, I don't know whether everybody can see this, but I'm going to read it out because I think it's really important. I changed careers after 20 years. My employer was not supportive and I ended up having a breakdown. Now I've got a great job and wish I'd left sooner. But there are other roles out there and you just have to find where you need to be. That's amazing. It's really positive. You can look for disability confident employers. You can look online. They have had to prove themselves that they are supportive and they're part of like an alliance. So I'd really recommend that if you are struggling and you're looking into different sectors, or you're starting on your career, you're starting out, looking for disability confident employers is a real positive. Okay, let's have a quick whiz back to the polls. Do you consider your neurodiversity a disability? So 8 have said yes and 5 have said no. Do you feel, though, out of those 8 that have said yes, that if people were more informed, that you would feel it less of a disability and more of a positive? Obviously, it's quite varied because I don't know what your your condition is and what you're struggling with. But just as an overview, do you consider, do you think if people were more aware and were educated to understand neurodiversity, you would still feel it was a disability? Let's have a look. Thank you for sharing that.
That's quite right. That's what I'm here for. Don't worry.
Depends on the employer, as I said in my previous comments. Yeah,
I think what you hit the nail on the head with a lot of this, Emma, it is the awareness of the employers. Sometimes it's the stereotypes that they have in their head when they think of sort of potentially learning difficulties and disabilities, and that's sort of the mindset that people are in, and not embracing of neurodiversity and looking at those benefits. I mean, I've got a number of colleagues here that will sometimes talk about them quite openly. Some of them don't necessarily, but it's from our point of view, it's understanding that actually these are very strong individuals. Sometimes having that sort of laser focus to detail, and it certainly benefits us at the same time. And I'm sure it's the same with some of the people who attend to see, and also employers out there as well. But sometimes where you don't have the knowledge, whether it's from the manager or from the department itself, people can feel that they've been discriminated and mistreated, and don't enjoy the environment. So to hear that somebody's been in the environment for 20 years, but they felt they wasn't supported is bad. But then they've been able to move on to better things, and that's sometimes
amazing that they had the courage to move on. To be honest, it's incredible. I think the more we talk about it, the more webinars like this that take place. We are championing at the Better Health Generation neurodiversity and trying to get the message out there, which is why we're doing this deep dive as well. So, it's, and that's focused on managers, leadership, etc., to try and just navigate it and make sure people understand neurodiversity and are more inclusive. At the end of the day, there's so much talent out there. It just needs to be embraced. And if it means putting a different process in place, well, then you put a different process in place. Let's work together to make sure everybody, feels included and can achieve their very best and get to where they need to be and where they want to be. I will follow up if it's okay with you, Martin. With I've got a resource pack which is quite handy. So if you want to send it on to anybody, that's fine. But I will put my details in the chat box for anybody else who wants a conversation.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Emma. I mean, what we will do is we'll share the slides around. We'll also share the sections or the segments of the recordings around to everybody. But please do sort of continue to raise that awareness and to look into these things, especially if you consider yourself to be that neurodiverse individual. You can learn more about it yourself, and also how you can educate people on what those conditions are as well, and really be that sort of catalyst for change as we move forward. I think the key part is that education and his awareness. I feel from my point of view, there are more conversations that happen around this. But again, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, just in terms of, some cases, the interview process, putting those different processes in place. An interview, typically somebody that is neurodiverse may not perform particularly well in an interview. So where you would normally go through your standard 10 whatever questions it may well be, they may not sort of thrive in that sort of environment. However, if you gave them a practical activity, they may be able to do it 10 times quicker or faster and more efficient than somebody that's that could taught themselves for England. But it is those sort of points really. Emma, is there any sort of concluding anything that you want to say before we sort of move on through the session at all today?
No, just keep talking about it, keep opening up the conversations, don't be afraid. And those who are online who feel like it is a negative for them, let's keep talking about it, because it is a positive, and you offer incredible things to your education, your workplace, your family life, and you can achieve great things. Don't look at it as a barrier. Let's try and look at it as a positive. And I firmly believe that, as somebody who is probably neurodiverse myself, but has never been diagnosed, because I am quite high functioning. I'm a real advocate for celebrating differences and looking for strengths in everybody and positives. So thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you've got something from today's session.
I certainly have, and I do thank you for sort of sharing that with us. I know we've got some of our team members on here as well, and it helps us as an organisation to raise that awareness and for them to have that better understanding as well. And I do think we're sort of thinking yourself, sort of including being that neurodiverse. I think everybody is to a certain extent.
Yeah,
it's just some will have it in different situations or sort of in those circumstances anyway. But no, I really do appreciate you sort of coming on and really raising our awareness. Thank you very much, Emma, and we'll bring you back on at the end where we sort of conclude out. Well, please, if anybody does want to continue asking questions about neurodiversity, please continue. The polls will continue to be open as well. Please do share your thoughts on there as well. But thank you very much, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you.